The nightmares never truly stopped. They just learned to hide in the spaces between Cornelius's heartbeats, waiting for moments of weakness to surge forward with teeth bared. Tonight, like every night for 4 years, Serafina died in his arms again. The enemy blade meant for his heart found her chest instead. Her blood, warm and impossibly red, soaked through his battle armor as she smiled, and pressed their newborn son into his trembling hands. "Name him Zapier," she'd whispered, her voice already fading. "Promise me you'll love again. Promise me you'll give him a mother. Promise me." She was gone before she could finish. Cornelius woke gasping, his sheets tangled around him like chains. The moon hung heavy outside his window, silver light pooling on the floor like judgment. He pressed his palm against his chest where his heart still beat, the heart she'd died protecting, and forced his breathing to steady. For years. For years of carrying the weight of a promise he couldn't keep. His advisors didn't understand why he'd waited so long to choose a new Luna. They saw strength, duty, the needs of the pack. They didn't see the ghost that walked beside him, the constant whisper that his instincts had failed him once and would fail him again. Athena was the logical choice. Perfect, really. Every strategist in the pack agreed. So why did his wolf pace restlessly in his chest every time she smiled at his son? Down the hall, Cornelius found Zapier awake, small body curled in a ball of blankets, eyes too old for a 4-year-old staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep either, little one?" Zapier didn't answer immediately. He never rushed his words, this strange, watchful child who had inherited his mother's knowing eyes. "Papa," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, "why are you going to marry the cold lady?" Cornelius sat on the bed's edge, smoothing his son's dark hair. "She's going to help protect the pack. Help protect you." Zapier shook his head slowly. "She smells like lies, Papa. Like blood under flowers." The words sent ice through Cornelius's veins. But he was an alpha. He made decisions with his head, not his heart. His heart had gotten Serafina killed. "Sleep now," he said, kissing his son's forehead. "Everything will be fine." But Zapier's eyes remained open long after his father left, staring at shadows that seemed to whisper secrets only children could hear. In the infirmary's forgotten corners, where dust gathered on unused shelves and shadows pooled like dark water, Prometheus had learned to become invisible. It was her greatest skill, this talent for disappearing. She'd perfected it across 3 packs and 15 years of survival, learning which footsteps required immediate stillness, which tones of voice preceded violence, which shadows could swallow a scarred omega whole if she pressed herself deep enough into them. At 24, Prometheus wore her history on her skin. The burn scars climbing her left arm from when the Silver Creek Alpha had decided she needed discipline. The thin white lines across her shoulders from the whip in the Thornwood pack. The jagged mark beneath her collarbone where she'd been branded as property at age 8, the night her birth pack had sold her for 3 bags of grain and a hunting dog. She'd stopped counting the scars years ago. They were simply part of her now, like her gray eyes and the silence that had become her native language. But her hands had never scarred. And her hands could do something she didn't understand, something she'd hidden even from Marin, the elderly healer who had taken her in when she'd stumbled into Ironfang territory 5 years ago, half dead and wholly broken. Her touch could heal. Not dramatically, not magically. But wounds closed faster under her fingers. Fevers broke when she pressed her palm to foreheads. Bones knit together in half the normal time. She'd learned to hide it, to attribute it to herbs and rest, because the last thing a damaged Omega needed was to be labeled a witch. Today, the infirmary buzzed with ceremony preparations. Athena's demands for perfection had reached even here, every surface scrubbed, every herb jar polished, every sheet pressed to military precision. Prometheus worked in silence, as always, until she heard the slap. Through the doorway, she watched Athena backhand a young Omega servant who had spilled ceremonial wine on the new Luna's dress. The girl crumpled, whimpering, and Athena smiled, actually smiled, before walking away. Prometheus didn't move, didn't intervene. Survival meant silence, and silence meant invisibility, and invisibility meant living another day. But that night, she found a wounded sparrow outside the infirmary window, its wing bent at an ugly angle. She cupped it in her scarred hands and watched the wings slowly straighten, the bird's frantic heartbeat calming against her palms. If only someone could heal her the same way. The forest had always felt safer than the pack house. Zapier ran between ancient oaks, his small legs burning, tears streaming down his cheeks. Behind him, Athena's words still echoed, "The boy is weak, Cornelius." Coddled. A proper Luna would correct that softness before it becomes a liability. She'd set it right in front of him. As if he were furniture. As if he didn't have ears or a heart or a mother's memory living inside his chest. He didn't know where he was going. He only knew he couldn't stay there, watching his father nod thoughtfully at the cold lady's cold words. The ravine appeared without warning. One moment solid ground, the next nothing. Zapier tumbled down the rocky slope, his arm bending wrong, a scream tearing from his throat before he crashed into the leaf-covered bottom. The pain was a living thing, white-hot and consuming. He curled around his broken arm and sobbed, alone in the darkening forest, certain no one would find him. Certain no one would even look. Then she appeared. She came through the trees like a forest spirit, basket of herbs over her shoulder, gray eyes wide with alarm. An Omega, he could smell the lower rank on her, covered in old scars and fresh dirt. She shouldn't be out here. Shouldn't be anywhere near an Alpha's son. Please, Zapier whimpered. Please help me. He watched her hesitate. Watched the calculations behind her eyes, the risk, the punishment, the logical choice to walk away and let someone else find him. But she didn't walk away. She knelt beside him, her scarred hands impossibly gentle as they examined his arm. "This will feel strange," she whispered, and her voice sounded like she'd almost forgotten how to use it. Her palms pressed against his break, and silver light bloomed between her fingers. The pain dissolved like morning mist, the bone shifting, knitting, healing. Zapier watched with wonder as his arm became whole again. "You're magic," he breathed. "Are you an angel?" She flinched at the word like it hurt. "No. Just please don't tell anyone. They'll punish me." Zapier sat up slowly, testing his healed arm. "I promise." She nodded, moving to leave. "Wait," he called. "Will you be my friend?" "I don't have any friends." Something cracked in her expression. Something soft and terrified and hopeful. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll be your secret friend." Athena Valeris had been groomed for power since she could walk. Her father, Alpha Crassus of the Northern Territories, had recognized her potential early. While her brothers learned to fight, Athena learned to manipulate. While they swung swords, she studied the art of making others swing them for her. She was never meant to be Luna, that subservient title, that secondary role. She was meant to be Alpha. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Marry Cornelius. Produce an heir of her own blood. Eliminate the inconvenient cub who currently stood between her and total control. Then, when the moment was right, eliminate Cornelius himself. She would rule both territories, the first female alpha of a united pack stronger than any in the region's history. Zapier was a problem she'd solve after the ceremony. But there were other problems requiring immediate attention. The elderly healer, Marin, watched Athena with knowing eyes that saw too much. The old woman never challenged her directly. She wasn't stupid, but that awareness was dangerous. The northern outpost requires a healer, Athena told Cornelius over dinner, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. Poor Marin has been working so hard. The mountain air would do wonders for her aging bones. Cornelius agreed without suspicion. He agreed to everything now, this hollow alpha going through the motions of living. It was almost too easy. With Marin dispatched to a post 3 days' travel away, the infirmary fell under Athena's indirect control. She began cataloging the Omegas, noting which ones might be useful, which ones might be threats, which ones might simply disappear without anyone asking questions. But something else caught her attention, Zapier's strange behavior. The boy who had been sullen and withdrawn was suddenly sneaking into the forest, returning with dirt on his knees and something almost like happiness in his eyes. She sent her personal guard to follow him. "There's an Omega meeting him in the woods, my lady. Scarred creature. Works in the infirmary." Athena's lip curled with disgust as she caught a glimpse of the woman through the trees, ragged scars visible even from a distance, herb-stained fingers, the hunched posture of a broken thing. "What is that creature doing near the main house?" she murmured. "What is it doing near my future territory?" The guard awaited orders. "Not yet," Athena decided. "Let the boy have his little pet for now. After the ceremony, we'll clean house properly." Her smile was beautiful and utterly empty. 3 weeks before the ceremony, Cornelius finally followed his son into the forest. He told himself it was concern, Zapier's constant disappearances, the strange contentment that had replaced his usual solemnity. But deeper than concern, in the place where his wolf paced restlessly, something whispered that he needed to see. Needed to know. He tracked his son's small footprints through the underbrush, alpha senses alert, until he heard something that stopped him cold. Laughter. Zapier was laughing, actually laughing, for the first time since Seraphina's death. The sound pierced through 4 years of grief and guilt like sunlight through storm clouds. Cornelius pressed forward, silent as the predator he was, and found them in a clearing bright with afternoon sun. An Omega woman sat cross-legged in the grass, showing Zapier how to identify different healing herbs. Her hands moved with gentle confidence, pointing out leaves and roots while Zapier nodded seriously, then erupted into giggles at something she said. She smiled barely, hesitantly, as if she'd forgotten how, and the expression transformed her scarred face into something quietly beautiful. Then she sensed him. Her head snapped up, gray eyes widening with terror, and she was on her knees before he could speak, forehead pressed to the earth in complete submission. Trembling. Waiting for punishment. Waiting for violence. Cornelius had seen fear before. This was something different. This was the bone-deep terror of someone who expected cruelty as certainly as sunrise. "Papa, no." Zapier scrambled in front of her protectively. "She's my friend. She healed my arm when I fell. Don't hurt her." Cornelius approached slowly, carefully, the way one approaches a wounded animal. He saw the scars, burns, and blade marks and brands that spoke of horrors he couldn't imagine inflicting on another living soul. His wolf held something incomprehensible, straining toward her. "Look at me," he said quietly. She raised her head, tears tracking through the dirt on her cheeks. "Who did this to you?" She didn't answer. The silence stretched between them like a held breath. Cornelius didn't force it. Instead, he said something that surprised them both. "Thank you. For making my son smile again." Before leaving, he turned back. The ceremony. Watched from inside the hall. Not with the servants. Inside. He walked away, and Prometheus pressed her hand against her racing heart, feeling something she hadn't felt in 15 years. Hope. And the absolute terror that always followed it. The night before the ceremony, Athena's patience finally cracked. She found Prometheus alone in the infirmary, organizing herbs with the mechanical precision of someone who found comfort in repetitive tasks. The Omega froze at her entrance, dropping immediately into a bow. "You've been spending time with the Alpha Sun," Athena said, her voice silk over steel. "I apologize, my lady. It will not happen again." "No." Athena circled her slowly, examining the scars with clinical disgust. "It won't." Prometheus kept her eyes on the floor, but Athena noticed something in the set of her shoulders, a tiny spark of defiance quickly smothered. Interesting. The broken slave still had some spirit left to break. After the ceremony, Athena told her personal guard outside that Omega disappears. Permanently. Make it clean. Meanwhile, in the Alpha's quarters, Zapier screamed himself awake. "Mama! Mama was here." Cornelius gathered his son against his chest, feeling the small body shake with sobs. "It was just a dream, little one. Just a dream." "No, Papa. She was really here. She told me something important." Zapier's tear-streaked face was utterly serious. "She said the healer is the real one. The one with the scars." She said, "Trust my heart." A chill ran down Cornelius's spine. "Zapier, you have to listen, Papa. Mama said the cold lady will hurt us. But the healer, she's the one. The goddess sent her." Cornelius held his son until the small body finally relaxed into exhausted sleep, but his own rest would not come. At midnight, he found himself at Seraphina's grave, moonlight silvering the stone. "Am I doing the right thing?" he whispered to the earth that held her bones. "Give me a sign. Anything." The wind shifted. And there, at the base of the headstone, something impossible, a white moonflower blooming in the frost-hardened ground. Out of season. Out of nature's logic. Blooming exactly where Seraphina's heart would rest beneath the soil. Cornelius stared at the impossible flower for a long time. But he still didn't understand. Not yet. The Grand Hall of Iron Fong had never looked more magnificent or more suffocating. 12 packs had sent representatives. Dignitaries filled every bench, their hungry eyes cataloging political implications. Alpha Crassus sat in the place of honor, satisfaction radiating from every pore as he watched his daughter prepare to claim her prize. Prometheus stood at the very back, nearly invisible in a borrowed dress that covered most of her scars. The Alpha had invited her inside, so inside she stood, though every instinct screamed for her to run. She watched Athena ascend the ceremonial platform in a gown of white and silver, perfect and cold as a winter statue. Cornelius performed his role flawlessly, speaking the ancient words with a voice that carried no emotion. His wolf had gone silent, which should have felt like peace. Instead, it felt like death. Zapier stood where tradition demanded, small and still in his ceremonial clothes. But his hands had begun to tremble. The high priestess brought forth the crown, that ancient circle of silver forged by the moon goddess herself during the first Pack Wars, worn by every true Luna in 700 years of Pack history. The metal seemed to pulse with contained power as she raised it above Athena's head. "By the blessing of the moon goddess, I crown thee." The crown touched Athena's hair. And Zapier moved. With strength no 4-year-old should possess, he lunged at the platform, small hands ripping the crown from Athena's head before anyone could react. The circlet flew from his grasp, clattering down the ceremonial steps, rolling across ancient stone until it stopped at the feet of a trembling Omega in a borrowed dress. Dead silence. Zapier climbed down from the platform, walked through the frozen congregation with absolute certainty, picked up the crown with his small hands, and placed it directly on Prometheus's head. "This is the real Luna," he said, his child's voice ringing clear as a bell. "Mama told me in my dream. The goddess told me through Mama." The crown erupted in silver flames. The high priestess crashed to her knees, face white with shock. "The flame of selection," she whispered. "It hasn't burned since the first Luna. 700 years. Chaos erupted. Witchcraft." Athena screamed, her perfect composure shattered into something ugly and desperate. "Dark magic. That Omega has corrupted the child. She must be executed immediately." Alpha Crassus surged to his feet, fury darkening his features. "My daughter is the rightful Luna. Kill that slave and restore order." Guards moved toward Prometheus, but stopped short. The silver flames crowning her head burned brighter, casting dancing shadows across the walls, and no one dared touch divine fire. Prometheus couldn't breathe. The crown weighed nothing on her head, but the flames felt like coming home. Like being seen for the first time in her life. Like every scar on her body was being acknowledged and declared worthy in the same breath. She was terrified. She was crying. She couldn't move. "The flame does not lie," the high priestess declared, her voice carrying the weight of ancient law. "The goddess has chosen. We cannot refuse what the divine has blessed." Athena turned to Cornelius, her mask fully fallen now, revealing the viciousness beneath. "You would choose this slave over me? Over peace? Over your pack's very survival? Her father's army will destroy everything you love." Cornelius stood frozen between two worlds, the logical path of alliance and politics, and the impossible path his son had illuminated. He looked at Athena and saw the cold calculations behind her perfect eyes. He looked at his son and saw absolute conviction. He looked at Prometheus, crowned in divine fire, and his wolf finally broke through the cage of his grief. Mate, mate, mate. The truth he'd been too blind, too broken, too afraid to see. The goddess hadn't just chosen a Luna for his pack. She'd returned what he'd lost 4 years ago on a blood-soaked battlefield. "I choose the goddess's will," Cornelius said, his voice steady for the first time in years. "I choose my son's truth." He met Prometheus's tear-filled eyes. "I choose her." Athena's scream of rage echoed through the hall as her father declared war. They stormed out with their delegation, already shouting battle orders. Prometheus stood trembling in her crown of flames, looking at the Alpha who had just chosen her over everything logical and safe. "Why?" she whispered. "You don't even know me." Cornelius stepped forward, reaching out slowly, giving her time to retreat. "She didn't." "Then let's change that." The war came swiftly and ended faster. When the allied packs saw the silver flames of divine selection, armies faltered. Wolves who had prepared to fight against Iron Fang laid down their weapons and refused to battle against the goddesses chosen. Alpha Crassus's forces, already uncertain, crumbled within weeks. He was stripped of his territory. Athena was exiled to the wastelands, screaming curses that echoed off the mountains until silence finally swallowed her. But the true transformation happened quietly, within Iron Fang's borders. Prometheus learned to lead the way she'd learned to heal, slowly, carefully, one soul at a time. She established free healing for all ranks, from the highest-born warrior to the lowest Omega servant. She abolished the trading and selling of pack members throughout Iron Fang's territories, writing new laws with the same scarred hands that had once been branded as property. "You're changing everything," Cornelius told her one night, watching her review proposals by candlelight. "Some of the older families are resistant. They'll adapt," she said quietly. "Or they'll leave. No one in this pack will ever be sold again. No child will ever feel what I felt." 6 months after the ceremony, the mate bond finally awakened. Cornelius had felt it first, had recognized it the moment the flames crowned her head, but he'd waited. She needed time to heal, time to believe she was worthy of love, time to stop flinching when he reached for her. He would have waited forever if necessary. But one morning, Prometheus woke with her hand over her heart, feeling the golden thread that connected her soul to his, and finally understood why the goddess had led her through so much darkness. To find this light, Zapier called her Mama without hesitation now, climbing into her lap to hear stories about healing herbs, falling asleep between them like he'd always belonged there. The scars on her body faded slowly, not through magic, but through love and time and the simple medicine of being seen without flinching. 2 years later, twin daughters arrived. 3 years after that, a new Omega stumbled across Iron Fang's borders, scarred, starving, waiting for violence. Luna Prometheus met her personally at the gate. "You're safe now," she said, taking the trembling woman's hands in her own. "I was once where you are. Let me show you what healing looks like." Above them, the ancient crown pulsed with gentle silver light, the goddess still watching, still approving, still choosing the broken to become the blessing. Sometimes the divine doesn't select the strongest or the purest. She chooses the most shattered, because only those who have been broken know how to help others become whole.